It's late August 2026, and I was just looking at the overall market mood, and it's a really fascinating moment right now
Well, absolutely.
because we have this huge panic over AI supposedly destroying traditional businesses, right?
Mhm.
But then you look at how companies are actually making money, and that theoretical panic is just violently colliding with reality.
Yeah, the spreadsheets are hitting the real world.
Right. And for the better part of a year, the dominant narrative on Wall Street has been this apocalypse.
Right, the end of software as a service.
Exactly. The underlying fear was that generative AI would just completely wipe out traditional software companies. I mean, if an AI can write code and analyze data and, execute tasks on command, a corporation doesn't need to buy thousands of individual software seats for human employees.
With theory, yeah.
But then you look at the numbers. Salesforce just reported an 11% revenue jump for their fiscal second quarter.
Mhm.
They pulled in $11.35 billion. So this apocalypse didn't really happen to them.
No, it didn't. But the mechanics behind that revenue jump, um, they reveal a pretty significant shift in how enterprise tech is actually functioning now. So Salesforce is aggressively pushing their new Agentforce suite, which pivots away from selling tools for humans and instead allows clients to build autonomous AI agents.
Right.
But the really revealing detail in their quarterly report is that a massive chunk of their recent profit didn't come from selling software at all.
Oh, wait, really?
No, it came from a $2.6 billion paper gain on their strategic investment in the AI startup Anthropic.
Okay, so wait. Is Salesforce surviving this whole AI shift because they're fundamentally building better software, or are they just operating like a like highly successful venture capital fund hedging their bets? Because if you own a massive stake in the very company that's supposed to make your business model obsolete,
You still capture the upside?
yeah, you still win when they succeed.
Right. Well, their strategy relies on synthesizing those two positions.
Yeah.
So Salesforce understands that a foundational AI model, even one as powerful as Anthropic's, is essentially a high-performance engine with no fuel.
It lacks context.
Exactly.
Mm.
By partnering with Anthropic to create what they're calling CloudForce, Salesforce integrates a cutting-edge reasoning engine directly into their clients' proprietary customer databases. So Anthropic provides the raw cognitive processing, but Salesforce holds the monopoly on the historical sales data, the customer complaints, purchase habits.
The stuff that actually makes the AI's output useful to a business?
Yes, foundational data layers remain the most valuable real estate in the enterprise sector.
But the moment an AI has access to those deep foundational data layers, the security risks must just multiply exponentially, right? I mean, market data shows CrowdStrike just posted a 26% revenue jump to $1.47 billion. And that was driven almost entirely by what the industry is calling the mythos moment from back in April 2026.
Yeah, April really changed things. The release of Anthropic's Mythos model completely inverted the security paradigm for large enterprises.
Yeah.
Prior to that, cybersecurity mostly involved using machine learning to defend networks against human hackers.
Right.
But Mythos demonstrated publicly that an AI could autonomously map a complex corporate network, identify obscure vulnerabilities, and exploit them faster than any human team could even respond.
Wow.
So the adversary is no longer a syndicate of hackers working out of a basement. It's an autonomous, endlessly scalable digital entity.
Which makes sense because a human hacker needs to sleep, right? They need to coordinate. They have to manually write scripts. An autonomous AI agent can probe like 10,000 network endpoints simultaneously at 2 in the morning.
Exactly.
So the only viable defense against a swarm of offense AI bots is to deploy a faster swarm of defensive AI bots. You're forcing every major corporation into this involuntary arms race, buying agentic security from companies like CrowdStrike to just dynamically rewrite firewall rules in real time.
And sustaining that real-time algorithmic warfare requires an astronomical amount of physical computing power, which is where the pristine digital world crashes into the constraints of manufacturing.
It's NVIDIA.
NVIDIA. Their second quarter results are just staggering, $96.22 billion in revenue.
Wait, 96 billion?
$96.22 billion. That's a 106% increase. They are flush enough to just spend $12.9 billion acquiring the open source AI platform Hugging Face. But the fascinating bottleneck here is that NVIDIA's growth trajectory has absolutely nothing to do with market demand.
Because their growth is entirely capped by the physical reality of fabrication plants.
Right.
Like foundries like TSMC simply cannot print the silicon wafers fast enough, and the advanced memory chips required to assemble these server racks, they remain in severe shortage. A cloud provider can have $10 billion ready to deploy, but you can't digitally download a physical semiconductor.
You really can't.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing geopolitical constraints on that hardware create a massive accelerated feedback loop overseas. So the United States has strict export restrictions designed to starve certain markets of these advanced chips.
Uh-huh.
But in response, the Chinese AI company Z.AI just released a low-cost model called GLM 5.3 Flash. It currently ranks in the top 10 globally for performance, and corporate disclosures indicate it was trained entirely on 100,000 domestically produced chips, heavily relying on hardware from Huawei.
So policymakers designed the embargo to maintain a technological monopoly, but it basically functioned as a massive market incentive for a parallel ecosystem.
Yeah.
By cutting off access to NVIDIA, the policy forced domestic tech sectors in rival countries to aggressively fund and build their own self-sufficient silicon supply chains. The attempt to stifle a competitor ended up, like, midwifing a totally independent infrastructure.
It did. And, we can trace this exact tension between grand policy and physical friction all the way down to the local grocery store. The mechanics of paying for everyday items are undergoing this quiet, highly mathematical transformation that directly impacts consumer wallets.
Oh, you mean the literal pennies?
Yes.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been paying with physical cash lately, the United States Mint officially ceased production of the penny back in November 2025. And the reason was just raw materials. The zinc and copper costs meant it took almost 4 cents to manufacture a single 1-cent coin.
Which is wild.
It is. So retailers are now navigating this post-penny economy through mandatory cash rounding. Like, if your total is 4.98 cents, the merchant rounds up to $5 flat. If it's 4.97 cents, they round down to $4.95.
And over 20 states have passed varying laws dictating how this rounding must legally occur, while Congress is currently debating the Common Sense Act to establish a federal mathematical standard. The immediate consequence of all this is that the sticker price on a shelf is no longer the actual price.
Right.
The final cost at the register is now a variable equation dependent entirely on the physical medium of exchange the consumer chooses to use.
But see, a consumer trying to avoid that rounding penalty by paying with exact change via a credit card, they run into a completely different structural toll. The average credit card swipe fee is hovering at about 2.35% right now. Last year, those interchange fees cost merchants roughly $200 billion.
A massive.
For a lot of small businesses, payment processing is now their second highest operating expense, trailing only human labor. So smaller merchants are adapting by tacking that percentage directly onto the customer's bill as a checkout surcharge. It feels like a retail trap.
Oh, it totally is.
If I use cash, a mathematical rounding rule might charge me more. If I use plastic, I get hit with a surcharge to cover the payment network's fee. Are consumers just permanently stuck footing the bill for this illusion of convenience?
Well, the lack of competition among payment networks basically functions as a privately administered tax on daily commerce. Merchants are caught in this contractual bind. Current network rules often mandate that if a business accepts one card from a brand, they have to accept all cards from that brand.
Ah.
So they can't reject premium rewards cards, which carry the highest swipe fees to fund the points and the cashback perks for wealthier consumers. There is a pending settlement that would allow merchants to reject high-fee cards, but until then, the consumer absorbs the cost.
Speaking of absorbing hidden costs, while we're tracking the fees built into your grocery bill, a quick reminder that you can track down more financial candy, brain candy, and classic audiobooks over at clarinhoratio.com.
Nice.
Yeah. But looking at consumers attempting to bypass these massive structural costs, there's this really fascinating movement in DIY economics happening with local energy grids right now.
Oh, the plug-in solar panels in the UK.
Exactly. The UK government recently legalized the retail sale of these plug-in solar panels. A consumer can just walk into a high-street electronics shop, spend roughly $935 for a basic kit, mount the panels on an apartment balcony, and literally plug the system directly into a standard wall socket to feed generated power back into their own home.
It's a brilliant concept.
Yeah.
But the true engineering marvel of these kits isn't the photovoltaic cells. It's the regulatory guardrails that are physically built into the hardware.
Okay, how so?
Well, if a DIY enthusiast plugged raw solar power into a wall socket during a grid blackout, they could accidentally push live electricity back into dead municipal power lines and electrocute a repair worker.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that would be bad.
Very bad. So to prevent that, these kits utilize a specialized microinverter that's capped at exactly 800 watts.
800 watts. Okay, so wait. What does that actually power? Because that doesn't sound like a lot. Will it run a kettle?
No, definitely not. A standard electric kettle is usually around 3 kilowatts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The microinverter acts as a digital gatekeeper, constantly monitoring the alternating current frequency of the national grid. The moment it detects a drop in grid power, it shuts off the solar feed in milliseconds. That 800-watt limit is a deliberate throttling of economic efficiency in the name of baseline public safety.
Right.
It provides just enough ambient power to run always-on appliances, like a refrigerator or a Wi-Fi router. If you turn on your kettle, the microinverter forces your home circuitry to pull that massive deficit from the national grid.
So it's a perfect example of regulatory safety capping economic efficiency. And that tension between securing cheap energy and managing the physical limits of infrastructure is playing out on a massive geopolitical scale as well.
It really is.
The United States and Russia are currently locked in this intense contest for dominance over the world's third largest energy market, which is India.
Right. And Russia has aggressively captured market share there. They're supplying over 40% of India's crude oil imports in recent months. The United States is actively pressuring New Delhi to choke off that revenue stream by replacing Russian barrels with crude sourced from Venezuela.
Which, if you think about it, is so weird. If Washington's goal is to expand American energy dominance, pushing Venezuelan oil seems entirely counterintuitive. Why not push American oil?
It comes down to the heavy industrial chemistry of oil refining.
Okay.
American crude oil is categorized as light and sweet, but the massive billion-dollar refineries spread across India were physically engineered and constructed decades ago, specifically to process heavy and sour crude.
Ah.
The refining process relies on very precise temperatures and catalytic cracking units that are calibrated for a specific molecular weight and sulfur content. You can't simply pour light American crude into a refinery built for heavy crude without destroying the operating margins or even risking structural damage to the plant.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Venezuelan oil possesses the necessary heavy chemical profile that actually matches the Indian infrastructure. So the grand geopolitical strategy of the United States is entirely subservient to the physical viscosity of the oil.
That is wild. And simultaneously, physical supply chain blockages are altering other energy markets in that exact same region. The ongoing Iran war has severely choked off traditional maritime logistical routes for liquid petroleum gas and liquid natural gas coming out of the Middle East.
Right.
Because those physical shipping lanes are compromised, the United States has inadvertently become India's dominant supplier of LPG and LNG. We've seen a 60% jump in export volume over the last year.
But to force a broader behavioral change on the crude side, Washington is threatening to slap tariffs of up to 100% on countries that continue buying Russian energy.
Right.
And the legislative intent there relies on the assumption that financial pain will instantly alter global purchasing habits.
But if the global supply is already constrained, and your refineries require a specific chemical weight of crude, aren't tariffs just a totally blunt instrument that ignores the physical reality of the oil market? Like, regulators can tax a sovereign nation all they want, but a tax does not change the molecular structure of American crude oil to make it fit an Indian refinery.
Exactly. You can't legislate physics. And we see a similar dynamic when regulators attempt to use massive financial penalties to force behavioral change in the tech sector, too.
Oh, you mean the Meta settlement?
Yes. Meta recently finalized an $18 billion settlement with several U.S. states over claims that its platform design actively harmed teenage users.
And the structural economics of this deal are fascinating. I mean, the absolute maximum theoretical penalty, which they calculated per child over a 12-year operational window, was estimated at $1.4 trillion.
Which is roughly the entire market capitalization of the company.
Right. But Meta negotiated that down to $18 billion, and it's paid out in installments over a 10-year period. They transformed a potential existential threat into a highly manageable, amortized operating expense.
Yeah, the monetary fine is essentially a rounding error for a corporation of that scale. The true cost to Meta is the mandated structural change to their core product. The settlement legally forces the company to implement night mode by default for all teen accounts, physically blocking all notifications from midnight to 6 a.m.
And what's crazy is that internal documents revealed during the discovery phase showed that Meta engineers actually built a quiet mode years ago. But management deliberately kept it hidden as an opt-in feature buried, like 3 menus deep.
Because the behavioral economics department at Meta understands that opt-in features have notoriously low adoption rates.
Right.
If a tool hurts screen time engagement metrics, you make it as difficult to find as possible. The settlement simply weaponizes that exact same behavioral psychology against the company by making the safety feature the unchangeable default.
And we can trace this exact tension between spreadsheet optimization and actual user experience back to the physical world, specifically the daily commute.
Oh, the Thameslink trains.
Yes. So back in 2013, the UK government authorized a $2.14 billion procurement for a new fleet of Thameslink commuter trains. The government guidance mandated a design that maximized absolute capacity, requiring the trains to fit roughly 1,000 people to ease flow and provide maximum scanning space.
Right.
So the designers had to make the spreadsheet math work. To hit that capacity metric, they stripped the train seats down to the absolute bare minimum. They installed seats so thin, hard, and rigidly upright that frustrated commuters universally dubbed them ironing boards.
Ironing boards.
Yeah, it's the budget airline economic model applied to daily public transit. Strip the product down to its absolute bare minimum to maximize the spreadsheet, only to realize years later that actual human beings have to sit there. The physical footprint of a person was reduced to maximize the yield per square foot of the carriage.
Planners prioritize sheer volume over basic human comfort, assuming passengers had no choice but to tolerate the conditions. But now, starting in 2027 under the new Great British Railways public ownership, the government is being forced to spend additional millions in public funds to completely retrofit and recushion more than 60,000 of these ironing board seats.
Wow.
Yeah. The initial cost savings of a thinner seat were entirely erased by the long-term reality of physical rejection by the public.
You know, it's funny. These stories map out distinct economic pressures moving in wildly different directions, but they all share the central friction point. Thameslink realizes years later that human spines require padding. International trade policies fail to account for the physical weight and viscosity of crude oil. Payment networks alter the literal arithmetic at the grocery store checkout. And enterprise software giants bet their entire futures on AI reasoning engines that still desperately need human-curated data to function.
Grand theoretical planning constantly finds itself humbled by tangible constraints. Financial models assume a frictionless environment where capital and technology solve every issue instantly. But the global economy operates in a world strictly defined by physical and behavioral friction.
Which leaves us with a highly provocative thought drawn from a major 5-year employment study that was recently published by the National Foundation for Educational Research. The study projects that up to 3 million low to mid-level jobs could be eliminated by automation and AI by 2035.
That's a huge number.
It is. Yet as companies rush to automate everything from cybersecurity defenses to writing sales emails, employers are reporting a massive, paralyzing shortage of soft skills like complex problem solving, communication, and evaluating raw data.
Right. The research highlights that the ability to evaluate ambiguous information, adapt to unexpected operational scenarios, and communicate across different departments, those are becoming the most critical factors for long-term employment. An AI agent can park 1 million network data points in a second, but it takes human judgment to understand the political, social, or emotional context of what that data actually means to a client or a coworker.
Exactly. The ultimate irony of the AI boom might just be this. As we pour hundreds of billions of dollars into making our digital systems completely automated and frictionless, raw, messy, unautomatable human judgment becomes the most valuable commodity on the market. We keep trying to build pristine spreadsheets to run the world, only to discover that the world still desperately needs the human beings who know how to fix the spreadsheet when it inevitably crashes into reality.